On the evening of the 4th of October 1967, police in Nova Scotia received a strange report. 5 teenagers said an aircraft had crashed into the waters of Shag Harbour. 15 minutes later, 3 officers arrived in time to see a white light shining on the water where the aircraft crashed. Despite an official search and rescue effort, authorities said they couldn't find anything under the water. So just what did crash into Shag Harbour? A military aircraft? Or something more otherworldly? On the same night, in the area around Dartmouth in Nova Scotia, several people reported seeing low-flying objects with between 2 and 5 lights. One of these witnesses, Laurie Wickens, saw 4 lights in descending size matching the speed of his car before they plunged at a 45-degree angle. Around 30 witnesses described the object as being 60 feet long, 10 feet high, and dome-shaped. Local residents of Shag Harbour, including 3 RCMP officers, all reported seeing a dull, yellowish light descend to the water. It slowly drifted offshore before going out completely. The RCMP officers told civil and military aviation authorities that something had crashed in Shag Harbour. The authorities said there were no missing aircraft over Canada. Still, believing they were rescuing plane crash survivors, local fishermen and the Coast Guard improvised a search and rescue effort. They only found a thick, yellow foam and nothing else. In the days following the crash, HMCS Granby arrived with Navy divers to investigate and potentially recover the craft. However, all they reported finding was a dark object. In other words, a UFO. On October the 9th, the search was called off, with no explanation as to what had crashed into the harbour. The people of the village, who were still convinced it was a plane, were left in the dark. Reporter Ray McLeod was removed from the story in favour of a more sceptical journalist. Meanwhile, the Condon Committee, funded by the US Air Force, conducted an independent investigation into events. The investigator, electrical engineer Norman Levine, has been criticized by eyewitness and ufologist Chris Stiles. He says Levine failed to devote enough time to critically analyze events. 1 full year after the incident, the Condon report concluded that no further action was justifiable. Canada and the world appeared to forget about Shag Harbour. Then, in 1993, Chris Stiles and Doug Ledger received a grant from the Fund for UFO Research. They used it to research the Shag Harbour incident. Stiles points out that while witnesses thought they saw a plane crash, it was the authorities who first raised the prospect of a UFO. Stiles worked his way through hundreds of declassified documents to find any official information on the search effort. He uncovered telexes and correspondence between the search and rescue team and Canadian Naval Command. Surprisingly, they indicated that the main effort of UFO recovery was not at Shag Harbour, but 25 miles up the coast, just off Shelburne. This immediately raises more questions. Near Shelburne was Government Point, home to a joint US-Canadian military base with advanced submarine detection facilities. If there was something under the water near there, they would know. Stiles tracked down and interviewed the Navy divers present at Shag Harbour, but they insisted on remaining anonymous. According to Stiles, the divers claimed that by the time HMCS Granby had reached Shag Harbour, they were well aware that the object that had crashed into the water was no longer there. Whatever it was, it had travelled up the coast and rested on the seabed off Government Point, prompting a large American and Canadian surveillance effort. This was kept secret from the public. Furthermore, divers found the object accompanied by a second similar craft that appeared to be lending aid to the first. They even saw creatures between the 2 crafts. For almost a week, the naval force monitored the objects. They only broke off their vigil to intercept a Soviet submarine that had strayed into Canadian waters. The UFOs used this opportunity to resurface and fly off towards the coast of Maine. This is corroborated by eyewitnesses who saw 2 sets of lights flying from the direction of Shelburne on the 11th of October, exactly 1 week after the Shag Harbour sighting. But squadron leader Major William Bain, who was part of the rescue effort, says he was unaware of any such effort at Shelburne. And Major Victor Eldridge of NORAD claims to have no recollection of any event at Shag Harbour or Shelburne. He apparently ridiculed Chris Stiles for pursuing the case. Despite all the evidence pointing to a UFO, could the answer be more terrestrial? One lighthouse keeper in the area, called Irvin Banks, claims he found a burned metal cylinder, which he was asked to hand over to an American military officer, specially flown in from Virginia. Chris Stiles claims that another lighthouse keeper at Cape Rosway, called Barry Crowell, told him about a boat full of British commandos who landed on his island half an hour after the crash at Shag Harbour. These men stayed for 3 days, and by helicopter promptly left as mysteriously as they arrived. Stiles also found records that showed that Canada had purchased 3 submarines from the UK, which were expected to arrive in Halifax on the 5th of October, but were diverted to Shelburne instead. Today, Shag Harbour has a UFO museum to commemorate the incident. Yet, despite the wealth of eyewitness accounts, there is a lack of any hard evidence. We may never know what exactly was behind the lights and the yellow foam, and just what dark objects divers saw under the water. But so many matching testimonies, all stating the same evidence, can't be wrong, can they? Something did crash into Shag Harbour that night. With no official explanation for what happened, for now, the case is still wide open. In 1981, astronomer Robert Kirshner made a shocking intergalactic discovery. 700 million light-years from the Earth lies an enormous, barren sphere known as the Boötes Void.